Hello and welcome you all to the Legacy IS Academy. This is Ethics Core Booster program that we are providing for your ethics preparation. There are total 12 sessions, 8 daily sessions and 4 case study sessions. If you go through all these sessions, you will have the ethics enrichment with your content so that you can write in your answers, as well as your micro notes are being prepared, which are being available in the comment box of these videos. You can download them and revise them multiple times and use them as a last minute revision notes. Now we have covered the syllabus up till attitude and aptitude part. In this session 6, we are going to cover the particular part of your syllabus, that is ethics in public administration. Now, what is the syllabus topic here in ethics public administration? It is talking about the ethical issues or concerns and ethical dilemmas in the government and private institutions. The second topic, it is talking laws, rules and regulations and conscience as the ethical source of guidance for decision making. And third important topic it is talking is accountability in, we can say that, accountability and ethical governance. Yes, so let's try to deal with these topics. Every year 2 to 3 questions will be based on these, we can say, syllabus topics, and this particular topic is also very important for your case studies part. So first of all, we'll try to understand the basic terminologies, ethical issues and ethical dilemmas. Let's not go first into the standard definition. Let's try to understand from the basic example. Let's imagine that you are a district magistrate working in a particular, let's say, district, and you are having responsibility of any particular, let's say, road project construction, and you are going to award those, let's say, construction contracts to the private companies. Now tomorrow you get a call from local minister, MP, MLA, and he is talking like this: नमस्कार साहब, आपको मिले हुए बहुत दिन हो गए, आप आइए सुबह ब्रेकफास्ट करने के लिए हमारे घर पे. ठीक है, तो देयर इज सम काइंड ऑफ, लेट्स से, पॉजिटिव टॉक एंड यू आल्सो फील दैट ठीक है, तो सर ने बुलाया है तो हम जाके बात करते हैं. तो कल सुबह आप जाते हैं उनके घर पे मॉर्निंग ब्रेकफास्ट करने के लिए, चाय पे बात हो रही है. ही इज वेरी गुड टू यू, टॉकिंग अबाउट योर फैमिली एंड वी कैन से हाउ इट इज गोइंग ऑन एट वर्क, कुछ प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है ऑल. एंड एट द एंड ऑफ टॉक ही इज certainly asking you that one of his relative is basically a private contractor, and if you can award that particular contract to that contractor, it will be very good to you. And he is giving some hint that in future somehow it will benefit you. Matlab kya hai, he will have some kind of favor in terms of good transfer, promotion and all these things. Now you have this, let's say, you get the idea that yes, minister is somehow informally asking you to contract that. Then day after tomorrow in the morning you get a call from your superior, and he is also asking and requesting you to award that contract to the minister's relative. And you are now in a particular, let's say, dilemma that the rules and regulations and the public interest will say that the contract should be awarded to the most eligible person, and there should be transparency in awarding that contract. It is a public interest, rules and regulations, it is your duty. And the other hand, there is, let's say, order by the superior. Now this kind of, let's say, dilemmas you face generally while working in the administration, like as a district magistrate, as a SP, or we can say that all positions that you are going to hold. So basically ethical dilemmas are the kind of, let's say, situations that you face before taking decisions, and there are two or more competing values or principles, and taking decision is very challenging. So it is a basically challenging situation, not a normal situation wherein deciding what is right and wrong is not that much problematic. So challenging situations create such kind of ethical dilemmas, and therefore taking decisions become very difficult in these situations. That is called as, we can say, ethical dilemma. Now what is ethical concern and ethical issue? Let's try to understand the difference also. Ethical issues and ethical concerns is simply, we can say that whenever you come across a situation there when there is, let's say, compromise of ethical value. So here we can say that there is already a compromise of particular value, ethical value is there. For example, if talk about corruption, if you talk about corruption, so you can tell me what kind of, let's say, ethical value is, let's say, violated here. Yes, lack of integrity, right? So integrity is violated, honesty is violated, or we can say that the probity value is violated. So in this situation we can say that ethical issue is lack of integrity, lack of honesty. Now when we talk about, let's say, ethical dilemma, here there is something called as choosing between two competing values. And when you are choosing one of them, then automatically there is compromise of other value. So in future, it is going to happen in future, the compromise of value when the decision is taken. And that's why we can say that here is already compromise of value. In ethical dilemmas, there is, we can say that in future there may be compromise of value when the decision is taken. The third important aspect here is ethical issue, not necessarily that the person who is taking decision is going to face that ethical issue. Rather, in ethical dilemma, the decision maker is going to face that ethical dilemma. So you are in that position. Like I told you the story about the district magistrate. So he is going to take decision and he is facing the dilemma. An ethical issue, let's say ethical issue, we come across the child labor, we come across the dowry, let's say related deaths, or we can say that we come across different kinds of situations in our society wherein we are not the decision maker, but we come across that there is compromise of certain values. And in that situation, we say that it is ethical concern, ethical, we can say, issue. So dealing with ethical dilemma, so when you deal with the case studies part in your ethics paper, you will mostly deal with these ethical dilemmas and some of them ethical concerns and ethical issues. That's why I was telling you that while writing answers to case studies, this topic is going to be very helpful. Now, what are the standard ethical dilemmas? The standard ethical dilemmas you can talk about, like I will give you examples. Look at this. These are the standard ethical dilemmas faced by civil servants in their day-to-day administration, we can say. So law and ethics or compassion. Now I will give you example. Same standard example you can give. So old age person comes for some kind of, let's say, certificate, ration card, and let's say the person is not having some basic documents. But according to eligibility criteria, you must give, let's say, the old age person should have those, we can say that documents, otherwise ration card cannot be issued. Now, this says laws, rules, regulation. But the compassion aspect, or we can say that ethics aspect, will say that you should have some kind of empathy, compassion towards the old age people because they are weaker sections of society, to ensure social justice, which is also ideal of constitution, welfare state. Now, when we are talking about this thing, so there is a dilemma whether to, let's say, bypass the laws and rules and regulation and provide the ration card out of compassion, or strictly follow the rules and regulations. So such kind of dilemmas. Now what you will do? You can tell me in the comment box. In such situation, what should be the ideal conduct? Yes, I will tell you in future also. Just let me know your views and opinions also simultaneously. Superior order and public interest. So the earlier I told you or narrated the story. District magistrate going to award the contract and there is order by the superior. Although it is not the written order, try to understand. But you will face the dilemma whether to follow or not because your personal interest will be affected because of it. ठीक है, कल को उस मिनिस्टर ने, आपने मिनिस्टर का सुना नहीं, तो that minister will have some kind of wrong relations or bad relations with you, and in future that person, that minister may harm you in terms of your personal interest, transferring you to some kind of, let's say, rural backward district, and your, let's say, family may suffer in that situation. Such kind of things may happen and you may think that your personal interest is affected. So personal interest versus public interest, such kind of standard dilemma you will face. Confidentiality and transparency. Yes, it is very standard dilemma because as a civil servant you are basically going to take certain decisions or implement the decisions of the government, and when you have such, let's say, critical information about the government decisions, and we can say that government schemes and programs which are yet to be launched, such projects which are yet to be launched, or the information related to security of the state. Let's say you are part of Indian Police Service, working as a head of IB, or we can say that senior officers in some defense organizations, or we can say that internal security related organizations, law enforcement agencies. In that situation, you are supposed to have the confidentiality of the information. At the same time, when we are living in the good governance era, we can say that good governance era, there is more transparency is focused. Or we can talk about Nolan principles. Openness is one of the 7 principles of public life. So openness, transparency, and in RTI Act 2005, it talks about, let's say, proactive disbursement of information. So the civil servant is going to face the dilemma between whether to maintain the transparency or confidentiality of the information, because confidentiality will ensure security of state, friendly relations with the foreign nations and all these things. and ensure public order and the government decisions are effectively implemented. But at the same time, transparency is also important for good governance. So this dilemma is also commonly faced nowadays by the civil servants. Then neutrality and conscience or wisdom. Yes. So neutrality is very important. We can say value given by Weber. Weber says that emotions should not be applied in the let's say day-to-day administration by the civil servants, public servants. Why? Because emotions are subjective. They vary from person to person, and if everyone start taking decisions on the basis of emotions, you can understand what will happen in the administration. ठीक है, तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में chaos हो जाएगा ना. एवरीवन इज नॉट फॉलोइंग द रूल्स, whims and fancies, उनके अपने अपने इमोशंस की तरह सब लोग एक्ट कर रहे हैं. So that is going to be problematic, right? So that's why there should be some uniformity and some kind of enforcement of uniform standards, and that's why neutrality is promoted here. Neutrality in terms of being apolitical, neutrality in terms of being impartial, and that's why the person should not be applying his emotions. But on the other hand, the civil servants are having mandate of empathy towards the weaker sections, ensuring social justice and welfare schemes and programs are being we have to implement. Now you can imagine you have to implement a particular scheme. ठीक है, आपके कोई एक let's say weaker section के लिए scheme implement करना है, and you are basically looking for the eligibility criteria, and people are coming for let's say getting those services. Now if you do not have empathy and compassion, you will only focus on the letter side of that government schemes and program. You will not focus on the spirit side. That means you will not go beyond that what is written as words in that government scheme and program as eligibility criteria. So to have that let's say social justice and welfare of weaker sections of let's say society in terms of spirit side, we need empathy and compassion, and for that we need let's say application of wisdom. So like for example, to deal with this particular dilemma, we need wisdom. Yes, application of wisdom. Why? Because a civil servant has power, authority, and that civil servant can mobilize the resources of his office as and when required according to let's say situation, circumstances that are demanding. Now a old age person who is requiring a ration card, that person's application for the required documents can be fast tracked within the organization, in the office, and within 1 or 2 hours itself everyone can sign, and they can be let's say prioritizing this particular task, and that person can be given ration card. Why? Because that ration card is very important for receiving the basic things, no, basic needs. ठीक है, जैसे अंत्योदय योजना है, फूड नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट, सो फ्री फूड ग्रेन्स, उसके लिए राशन कार्ड लगेगा ना, बायोमेट्रिक है, everything is we can say that standardized, and for that purpose the documents are very important. तो एक चीज की वजह से वो पर्सन जो है basically you are ensuring social justice. ठीक है, now you are not violating or circumventing laws and regulations. Simply what you are doing within the laws and regulations, their framework itself, you are fast tracking, we can say that, applications. So it is ensuring that compassion. This is what we call it as wisdom. Application. अब वहीं पे वो neutral रहता तो only legal side, so following strictly what laws and rules are saying, क्राइटेरिया जरूरी है, आप फॉर्म भर के दीजिए, 14 दिन बाद आपको कार्ड मिलेगा, 14 दिन तक आप क्या भूखे रहेंगे? नहीं ना. So that is we can say that going beyond we can say rules and regulation to implement the spirit side of laws, spirit side of welfare schemes and program, and for that purpose we need conscience and wisdom also. Okay, so this is how we can talk about or deal with ethical dilemmas. Now what is the standard we can say that procedure to deal with ethical dilemmas? Let's try to see that also. Right. So process of resolving ethical dilemmas. So ethical dilemmas, just now we have seen the examples. Now how to resolve them, that is also very important. Let's try to understand how to resolve them. So first of all, we should be able to identify the ethical dilemma. So clearly defining the issue, distinguishing between ethical issues from legal and administrative issues, and identifying competing values. This is very important aspect. Identify the competing values. So that we can say that simply we can say that we are able to identify, recognize that there is ethical dilemma. So first thing is we can say that recognition, that there is something, competing values are involved. कुछ तो गलत हो रहा है, ठीक है, something is issue. That recognition, identification is very important. Then we can talk about is gather relevant facts. So gathering relevant facts will help you understand legal, administrative, and social context of that, we can say that ethical dilemma. That is very important, because when you have more and more information and data about the relevant issue, you will be taking more informed decision. बराबर है कि नहीं? नहीं तो आपको कुछ चीजें पता ही नहीं है और फिर आप डिसीजन ले रहे हो, तो somehow it will affect your informed decisions, right? So that's why. Just a moment. Hello. Yes. Let's continue. Now, what I am telling here is resolving ethical dilemma. It is going to be very helpful in your dealing with case study. Okay. So when you are dealing with case study, you are going to resolve the ethical dilemmas and take some kind of course of action or options. Right. So gathering facts will help you take, we can say, informed decision, or unbiased information जो होगा वो remove कर पाएंगे आप, and take proper decision. Then identify the stakeholders. Identifying stakeholders will ensure that whether you are ensuring prioritizing what are the needs of those stakeholders. ठीक है, सबसे पहले सबसे ज्यादा नीड किसका है, then automatically when you are deciding on a particular value or principle while taking decision between that competing values, then your decision will be correct. So identifying the stakeholders is also very important, like vulnerable groups कौन से है, whether you are, let's say, having a government as well as a stakeholder, or we can say that future generation, all these stakeholders you are identifying, and then you are taking this. Identifying conflicting ethical values, yes, whether it is integrity versus loyalty, transparency versus confidentiality, efficiency versus equity. So all this efficiency versus equity, output versus, we can say that equitable equity जिसको हम बोलते हैं, या distributive justice जिसको हम बोलते हैं, right? So that is, we can say that, very important, justice versus compassion. So once we identify it, then we are able to examine legal and institutional framework. So what are the constitutional provisions relevant? What are the laws and rules, regulation? What are the civil service values, conduct rules, what they are talking about, all these things. And then judicial judgments, okay, departmental guidelines, everything you are able to, let's say, examine all these things. And then we can talk about is yes, generate possible alternatives. So dilemma is there, but whether to, let's say, whether we have, let's say, alternatives. So having alternatives is also very, let's say, easy thing to resolve dilemma, because if we have a better alternative, then why to decide in that dilemma? We opt for better alternative. Avoid thinking in only two extremes. Develop multiple options so that you are taking the best possible option. I told you in case studies you are going to do this. Then evaluate alternatives using ethical principles. Now, what ethical principles you have to focus here? Yes, look at this. These ethical principles you have to focus. First, public interest. Yes, whether your decision will uphold the public interest, whether it is focusing on selfless actions and not involving any self-interest, that thing we have to focus. Then does it benefit society? Then second aspect, justice and fairness. Very important, let's say, civil service values also and virtue. Is everyone treated fairly? So we have important civil service values of impartiality and non-partisanship. So this is checked here, whether that decision is impartial, whether it is, let's say, fair. Then third is utilitarian. Does it maximize the overall welfare? So government decisions, mostly I told you that it is greatest good to the greatest number of people, and it should result into that kind of, let's say, outcome of decision. And that's what we can say that it is utilitarian philosophy is, let's say, checked here. Rights approach, individual rights, like we talk about फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट, एमजी नरेगा, जो अभी जो राम जी हो गया है, गवर्नमेंट स्कीम का नाम चेंज कर दिया है उन्होंने. So it is basically rights approach. So every individual is having certain basic fundamental rights, and those are implemented through, we can say that, government schemes, programs, and various laws, rules, and regulations. So are we ensuring those rights, are fundamental rights protected in the particular, let's say, decision? Then deontology, duty. Is my legal and moral duty ensure here? Virtue ethics. What would be the honest and compassionate officer do? Character is checked here. Constitutional morality. Is it consistent with constitutional values? So all this, let's say, ethical principles are evaluated in this manner and choose the most ethical course of action. So once we evaluate, then we are choosing one or two here which align with your decision, most appropriate decision, and we have ethical course of action. Implement with integrity. Once you decide that I am going to do this, then you should have courage of conviction. Okay, courage of conviction is very important while dealing with ethical dilemmas, that what you are doing is right and good. So that's why implement that with integrity and review and learn. So if suppose you make some bona fide mistake even in that dilemma like situation, so next time you should be reviewing it and learning from it, and next time whenever such dilemma arise, then you should be taking better, let's say, approach or better decision. I hope that now it is very clear to you. I think so. ठीक है, तो इसमें कोई डाउट है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं कि हाउ टू रिजॉल्व द एथिकल डायलेमा. नाउ देयर इज वन सिंपल अप्रोच आल्सो. लेट मी टेल यू हाउ टू डील विद एथिकल डायलेमा. यू कैन यूज दैट इन योर आंसर आल्सो. ठीक है, ये देखिए. Okay, this is the we can say simple approach that you can follow. What is that? Stop method. Stop method. What is it? S is for study the situation. So we talked about, let's say, studying the or gathering the data, identify the situation, identify the dilemma, then gathering the relevant data, and then we talk, let's say, understanding which are all stakeholders involved. So ये क्या है? Study the situation. Then think about the stakeholders. I told you we need to understand which are the stakeholders and we need to prioritize them. सबसे important किसका issue जो है वो पहले address करना है, priority किसको देना है. That is going to help you resolve the dilemma. Then O is for observe the ethical values, ethical principles. I told you, you need to evaluate your alternative options against, we can say, all these ethical principles. Selfless action, upholding public interest, constitutional principles, or utilitarian philosophy, deontology. All this we have to evaluate and then take decision. Finally, proceed with courage. So once we decide that what decision we are going to take in that ethical dilemma, then you are supposed to proceed with some kind of conviction. That's why courage of conviction is very important. And if you don't have courage, then you will regret. You are always confused that whether I was right. Okay, and then you will not be able to implement that decision with integrity and conviction. And that's why it is very important to have courage of conviction while making such decisions. Now let's talk about, ये तो सारा गवर्नमेंट के इंस्टीट्यूशंस का था. Now there are some, let's say, standard ethical dilemmas that private institutions are also facing. Look at this. Okay, so private institutions are also facing some kind of ethical dilemmas, and you will come across the case studies. You will come across the case studies where private organization, you are employee or CEO or let's say manager, HR of private organization, and you are facing all these, let's say, ethical dilemmas. So what are these ethical dilemmas? Let's try to understand first. Ethical concerns कौन से होते हैं पहले वो देखते हैं private institutions में, like corporate greed, profit over ethics. So here Mahatma Gandhi will say that commerce over morality, we can say commerce without morality is a social sin. So same aspect, the corporate greed, and let's say you can talk about, let's say, crony capitalism. So recent example you can give where IDFC First Bank officials in Haryana, so they have colluded unholy nexus with the public officials, and what they did, public funds जो है हरियाणा गवर्नमेंट के डाइवर्ट कर दिया अराउंड 600 crores. Can you imagine? फेक अकाउंट्स में ट्रांसफर कर दिया. So you can understand प्राइवेट सेक्टर जो है वहां पे तो ह्यूमन है ना, ह्यूमन इज सेल्फिश अकॉर्डिंग टू थॉमस हॉब्स, कौटिल्य, मैकियावेली. तो वो क्या करेगा? सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट देखेगा, वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट देखेगा. And this is how they, when they are having authority, we are going to talk about accountability, need of accountability. वही जरूरी है यहाँ पर. ठीक है. So then exploitation of employees. Now on day to day life, आपके आजू बाजू देखिए ना क्या होता है. कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्क पे एक्सप्लॉयटेशन हो रहा है, बॉन्डेड लेबर की तरह, दिहाड़ी जिसको हम बोलते हैं, राइट. देयर इज एक्सप्लॉयटेशन ऑफ वर्कर. प्लेटफॉर्म वर्कर्स, गिग वर्कर्स, आप रोज ब्लिंकिट से ऑर्डर करते हैं, कभी किसी वर्कर के साथ बात कर लीजिए 2 मिनट कि भैया आपका काम सही चल रहा है क्या, ये जो कंपनी होती है आपको सही ट्रीट करती है क्या. देन दे विल नरेट यू व्हाट इज हैपनिंग विद देम. ठीक है. किसी कैब ड्राइवर से बात कर लीजिए कि सर भैया आप खुद ड्राइव करते हैं या ये कंपनी वाले कितना % लेते हैं, आपके साथ कैसा व्यवहार होता है. So it is a kind of exploitation. You can see that especially the weaker sections are exploited by the strong ones. They are having capital. We see exploitation of employees, long working hours, poor working conditions, denial of rights. Then discrimination and harassment. So at workplace you come across gender discrimination. Even caste discrimination is very common, subtle. not openly. Try to understand. Subtle होता है. Gender discrimination भी subtle होता है. Openly नहीं करेंगे. So this women are not given higher positions, leadership positions, managerial positions, and somehow you can see that there is prejudices, stereotyping that women cannot do this work, women cannot be productive, efficient. बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसे आपको वर्क प्लेस पे रिफ्लेक्ट करते हुए दिखेगी. इट इज एथिकल कंसर्न एंड सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस इज मेजर कंसर्न. वी कैन टॉक अबाउट. 2-3 बार उन्होंने केस स्टडीज पूछा हुआ है. प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस देखिए आप. इट्स नॉट ओनली सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट, मेंटल हरासमेंट आल्सो, लॉन्ग वर्किंग आवर्स, not being considerate and compassionate towards the women, and we can say that those who are mothers also. Then lack of transparency, non-disclosure of information, misleading advertisement, opaque business practices. अब misleading advertisement, अब यूपीएससी का ही देख लिए, कोचिंग का ही. ठीक है. You can, let's say, you may have come across the news that the Consumer Protection Authority or forum has, let's say, given the fine for this particular IS coaching in Delhi for misleading advertisement. You may have come across this particular news. Basically, what is happening is the people, especially the corporates and private companies, they are misleading information, let's say giving false information about those products. ठीक है. आप देखते होंगे ब्यूटी प्रोडक्ट्स, वो बताएंगे फेयरनेस क्रीम है, 15 दिन में जो है आपका चेहरा जो है गोरा हो जाएगा. फेयर एंड लवली एक टाइम पे ऐसे ऐड करता था कि, या फिर आप देखते हो कि बेसिकली दे आर यूजिंग पीपल्स इमोशंस, so they are misleading, we can say, in terms of their advertising their products, services, and that's why people are falling for that and they are losing their money. So it is basically unethical. It is ethical concern, we can say. Unfair competition. In economy you learn about this, right? कि 2-4 जो भी मेजर प्लेयर्स है, they collude with each other and they decide कि यही अब प्राइसेस होगा. ठीक है. उनमें नेक्सस बना देता है वो, मोनोपोली, जियोपोली, राइट. जियो और जो एयरटेल है, अभी क्या है, डियोपोली है टेलीकॉम सेक्टर में. वैसे ही आप देखिए पेट्रोलियम सेक्टर में 3-4 ही जो कंपनी है उन्हीं का चलता है. बेसिकली व्हाट इज इट? इट इज, वी कैन से दैट अनहोली कंपटीशन है, अनहेल्दी कंपटीशन या अनफेयर कंपटीशन जिसको बोलते हैं. तो उसमें नया कोई प्लेयर एंटर करना चाहता है तो ऑफ कोर्स दे विल फेस लॉट ऑफ, वी कैन से, डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी प्रैक्टिसेस. ठीक है. तो प्राइस मैनिपुलेशन, spreading in misinformation about competition, then consumer exploitation is selling defective products, hidden charges, false. कभी आप जोमेटो से ऑर्डर करके देखिए, आप सब ऑर्डर करते हैं ब्लिंकिट जोमेटो से, जस्ट ट्राई टू सी कि वो क्या चार्जेस ले रहा है. आपको लगता है कि वो 10 रुपए 15 रुपए हर आर्टिकल में ऑफ दे रहा है, बट ट्राई टू सी द फाइनल बिलिंग. अब वहां पे वो ऐड करेगा हैंडलिंग चार्जेस, पैकेजिंग चार्जेस, डिलीवरी चार्जेस, जीएसटी, state GST, central GST अलग. So then they will have 100 rupees, 50 rupees extra. Basically, you can come across such kind of, let's say, consumer exploitation, और आप ध्यान भी नहीं दोगे उसको, आपको पता भी नहीं होगा. Conflict of interest, personal financial interest influencing business decisions. So ICICI CEO केस काफी फेमस हो गया था. तो बड़े बड़े कंपनीज के जो सीईओ होते हैं उनका कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हो सकता है उनकी पोजीशन की वजह से. Whenever we are dealing with the company affairs, so their private interest in terms of their, we can say that whatever the private business, or let's say उनके वाइफ होगी, उनका कोई कंपनी होगा, उनके कंपनी के साथ टाई अप कर दिया इन्होंने, we can say that without any, let's say, openness and transparency. तो ये क्या हो गया? कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. देन डेटा प्राइवेसी एंड मिसयूज, इट इज वेरी कॉमन. एक बार यूपीएससी ने केस स्टडी पूछा है इसके ऊपर कि डेटा मैनिपुलेशन कर रहा है, डेटा, लेट्स से उनके पास डेटा है तो डेटा सेल कर रहा है विदाउट एनी, वी कैन से दैट, कंसेंसस. ठीक है. तो इलीगल कलेक्शन, मिसयूज एंड सेल ऑफ कस्टमर डेटा, राइट टू प्राइवेसी इज वायलेटेड. एनवायरमेंटल नेग्लिजेंस, बहुत सारे ऐसे इंडस्ट्रीज होता है, दे आर हाईली पोल्यूटिंग. यू कैन गिव भोपाल गैस ट्रेजेडी. अभी रिसेंट में चेन्नई में जो गैस लीक हुआ, अमोनिया गैस लीक, ठीक है, तो पीपल डाइड, वर्कर्स डाइड देयर. And you may come across such situations wherein the company is releasing harmful gases, और नजदीक में वाटर बॉडी है वो पोल्यूट हो रहा है, रिवर, लेक. ठीक है. तो व्हाट इज इट? एनवायरमेंटल नेग्लिजेंस. ब्राइबरी एंड करप्शन, अभी मैंने एग्जांपल दिया आईडीएफसी वाला जो है करप्शन वाला ही केस है. टैक्स इवेजन इज वेरी कॉमन बाय द कॉर्पोरेशंस. ठीक है. शेल कंपनी बना के. इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट थेफ्ट, देन पुअर कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस, सोशल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी निग्लेक्ट. ये आप एंड में लिख सकते हैं. So these are ethical concern and you will have one case study related to this corporate governance और इन्हीं issues में से एक होगा. That's why I am telling you, you be prepared for this ethical dilemmas in private institutions. अब ऐसी situation आपको दे देंगे, yes, profit maximization and ethical conduct. So on one side you have to boost the profits. Every year there will be one case study like this. ठीक है, आपको बिजनेस जो है बढ़ाना है, प्रॉफिट है, आपका पर्सनल ग्रोथ भी उसमें इन्वॉल्व है, प्रोफेशनल करियर, आपको प्रमोशन नहीं मिलेगा अगर कंपनी ग्रोथ नहीं करेगा, प्रॉफिट नहीं करेगा, आपका डिपार्टमेंट अच्छा वर्क नहीं करेगा तो. एंड दैट्स व्हाई एथिकल शॉर्टकट्स, ठीक है, ये जो शॉर्टकट लेने के लिए बोलता है, वर्सेस मेंटेनिंग एथिकल स्टैंडर्ड्स. सो कॉस्ट कटिंग वर्सेस प्रोडक्ट सेफ्टी. फॉर एग्जांपल दे आर टॉकिंग, ठीक है, फूड प्रोडक्ट है एंड यू आर गोइंग टू एक्सपोर्ट इट, ठीक है, एक्सपोर्ट स्टैंडर्ड्स होने चाहिए, बट एक्सपोर्ट स्टैंडर्ड मीट नहीं कर रहा है. That's why you are basically facing a problem. Product safety का issue है, but cost cutting important है, आपको profit भी चाहिए. So that's why there is a dilemma. Shareholder interest versus stakeholders welfare. Stakeholders जो होता है, they are your consumers, and shareholders जो होता है वो company का होता है. They want profit, but stakeholder जो होते हैं आपके employee है, community है, their welfare is also important. Like layoffs versus employee welfare. What we have seen during COVID time, mass layoff. Whenever there is recession time, mass layoff हो जाता है. अब ये mass layoff हो रहा है और employee welfare, तो इसका मतलब ये है कि corporates are only thinking about their own business profit and they are not concerned about stakeholder welfare, right? Then transparency versus competitive advantage, then growth versus environment protection. Just now we talked about environment damage, excuse me, setting up a factory, environment harm. So a company can have different locations for setting up industry. अब एक particular location है which is far away from the village or we can say human habitations and it is a barren land. There is another location wherein you may have to, let's say, clear the forest. It is away from the, let's say, village, but you may have to clear the forest. And there is third location which is very near to village or human habitations, which may result into some pollution, air pollution affecting their human health. Deforestation hoga. And third option was, we can say, barren land, but it is away and it will require, let's say, transportation of raw material. It will increase the cost. अब देखिए dilemma, ठीक है, प्रॉफिट कम हो जाएगा ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉस्ट की वजह से, बट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स द एनवायरनमेंट, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स द पीपल, सोसाइटी, ये क्या डिसीजन लेंगे आप, कौन सा लोकेशन लेंगे, ये डायलेमा होता है. दिस डिसाइड्स योर, वी कैन से दैट कॉर्पोरेट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. ऑटोमेशन एफिशिएंसी वर्सेस ऑटोमेशन एफिशिएंसी वर्सेस एम्प्लॉयमेंट. तो रोबोटिक्स आ गया, एआई आ गया. एआई का एग्जांपल लेते हैं. रिसेंटली एआई हैज टेकन अप लॉट्स ऑफ जॉब्स, right? And because of that, basically AI is automating the things. It has increased the efficiency and reduced the, let's say, requirement of manpower. But you can see that employment, so losing jobs. ठीक है, AI का skills सबके पास नहीं है, although government is focusing on that, but yes, because of that there is, we can say, risking the job losses. AI adoption versus employee security. So this is the dilemma. Low cost versus quality safety, ये अभी हमने डिस्कस किया था ऊपर. Then loyalty to organization versus personal integrity, same, right? Let's say you are working in a company, construction company, you are constructing a flyover or a bridge. अब वहां पर एक सीनियर ऑफिसर है, ठीक है, वो सीनियर ऑफिसर आपको बोल रहा है, you come across a situation that there is, let's say, very low standard material is being used for construction, but according to government document, or we can say that prescriptions, certain standard safety measures are to be taken and the material should be strong enough. तो ये सब चीजें जब है, कंपनी जो है उसको प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइजेशन के लिए, दिस इज वैसे अनएथिकल प्रैक्टिसेस आर गोइंग ऑन. यू कम अक्रॉस दिस. नाउ पर्सनल इंटीग्रिटी सेज दैट यू शुड बी एक्सपोजिंग दिस, बट योर सीनियर इज थ्रेटनिंग यू टू कीप साइलेंट. ऐसा हो सकता है. दिस इज वैसे स्टैंडर्ड एथिकल डायलेमा एंड केस स्टडी भी आ चुका है इस पर, right? So when the senior is asking you to stay silent, your promotion will be dependent on it, otherwise you will lose the job. So it is threatening you, you will lose the job. Loyalty to the organization, yes. So when we, let's say, remain silent, you are loyal to the organization, you are ensuring its profit, but personal integrity, following unfair orders, standing by ethical principles, manipulating data to show better performance. There was one case study last year exactly on this manipulation of data. Okay, then short term gains versus long term sustainability, choosing short term profits over exploitation of resources for quick returns, long term sustainability. So ESG norms, right? Environment, society, governance. So they are violated, they must be adhered. Then we can talk about compliance and ethical leadership. Okay, so compliance is very important, but ethical leadership. So when we talk following minimum norms versus voluntary CSR initiatives. ठीक है, तो मिनिमम नॉर्म्स तो है ही आपको 2% जो है CSR कंपनीज एक्ट 2013 के हिसाब से, बट वॉलंटरीली वेदर यू आर मूविंग बियॉन्ड दैट 2%, whether you have been doing some kind of social responsibility before that companies act itself, that shows your image, or we can say voluntariness in terms of being responsible towards society and stakeholders. Company satisfaction versus truth in advertising. Yes, customer satisfaction, sorry, customer satisfaction, truth in advertising. Just now I told you misleading advertisement versus truthful information. So you can see that many times advertisement are misleading, and that is problematic. That's why we have consumer protection forum, right? So authority. So if you come across such let's advertisement, you should complain in that forum. ठीक है, अगर आपको लगता है कि कोई let's say misleading है, आपने product use किया है, you should complain. It's your right, and you may also get compensation. Try to understand this thing. All right, now you have understood ethical issues and concerns and dilemmas in private organizations. Now let's talk about next one. Next topic, we can say that. Next topic says that laws, rules, and regulations as a source of ethical guidance. As a source of ethical guidance. Okay, so first of all, basic concepts. What are laws, rules, and regulations? I will tell you basic definition of law. It is simply that ordinance of reason enacted by the state to achieve common good, right? It is basically a broader framework. It is basically a broader framework. We can say that it is a skeleton. It is a kind of skeleton, and it is decided by or enacted by state or legislature, sovereign body, legislature, parliament, for example, state assembly. So basically that is sovereign body. What is rules? Rules are basically the detailed guidelines to implement what is given in the law. It is a detailed guidelines. So that means within that framework we are getting detailed guidelines, and they are enacted by the administration or government. Detailed guidelines. Now other differences: uniform across the country. Yes, parliament has sovereign body, so it will be uniform, but different states may have different requirements, different needs, and geography, history, cultural aspect, social aspect, and that's why the rules may differ from state to state. We have, we can say, state list and concurrent list. So if there is a central law, that law will have different kinds of rules enacted by the state. For example, environment protection. So environment protection concurrent mein aayega. So different states will have different rules under that. Motor Vehicle Act. Again, central government will have Motor Vehicle Act. Then different states may have different rules. We can say that traffic rules and all. So that may differ state to state. So there is a flexibility in terms of, we can say, rules. Rules can be amended frequently. For example, you can come across, let's say, different rules under Environment Protection Act 1986. Okay. So hazardous substances management rules are there. Plastic, let's say, management rules are there. E-waste management rules. From time to time, because evolving situations are there. छोटी-छोटी mistakes हो जाते हैं, loopholes रह जाते हैं. So to overcome them, they are amended continuously. But broader framework जो होता है, you can see that after 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, 20 years only they are amended by the parliament. So it is flexible. It is more of a rigid. ठीक है, laws जो है rigid होते हैं. Now what is regulation? Regulation is basically compliance oriented. Regulation जिसको हम बोलते हैं, it is compliance oriented. So ensuring compliance of laws and rules by the people. What is written in the laws and rules, ensuring its compliance is regulation, we can say that. So regulation is more of implementation oriented. Right? Regulation is more of implementation, compliance oriented. So this is the basic difference you should know. There was one question, previous year question. See, whenever I am saying there was a question, you should be going through last 13 years of question. Okay, differentiate between laws and rules and how ethics help in framing laws. ये हम question second part भी deal करेंगे. Right? So you understand here that why we need laws and rules and regulations. So yes, as a society, when human beings started living together, so initially the society was very simple. not many people, not differences in terms of, let's say, culture, customs, traditions. Everyone was basically good. सब कुछ अच्छा चल रहा है, मजा मा ऐसा मजा मा चल रहा है. But yes, what let's say happened is when there was increase in population and the people started, let's say, having different, let's say, norms, social norms, society, culture, traditions, religion change. And that's why the people had now different value systems, different customs and traditions, which may have some conflict with others. ठीक है, अदर पीपल. अब उसकी वजह से क्या हो गया, सोसाइटी में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होने लगे. एवरीवन वांट्स टू हैव और इम्प्लीमेंट और सीक देयर ओन सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट. अब सब लोग सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट होंगे, सेल्फिश होंगे, तो व्हाट विल हैपन इन द सोसाइटी? देयर विल नॉट बी ऑर्डर इन द सोसाइटी, देयर विल नॉट बी हार्मनी एंड पीस इन द सोसाइटी, देयर विल बी chaos, there will not be rule of law, there will be injustice, the majority and strong will exploit the minority and weak. And that's why, to ensure all these things, Thomas Hobbes, we can say that social contract theory, so he was of the view that there is need of absolute state, Leviathan, और उसकी वजह से the absolute state will enact certain laws and rules and regulations to ensure certain minimum standards of behavior to live in the society. ठीक है, मतलब क्या है? नो हार्म प्रिंसिपल. पर्सन कैनॉट डू वायलेंस टू अदर पर्सन, अदरवाइज देयर विल बी पनिशमेंट, इम्प्रिजनमेंट. लॉ मिनिमम, बेसिक मिनिमम. नो ड्रिंक एंड ड्राइव. मिनिमम बिहेवियर और कंडक्ट, स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ कंडक्ट we can say expected while driving on the road, because it will harm the other person, innocent person, their life will be jeopardized. ये हमें expected होता है. That's why now the role of rules, laws came into the picture to govern the society and ensure order in the society, peace and harmony in the society. ये उसका motive आ गया, because human nature is both selfish as well as ethical. तो selfish वाला जो होता है, कुछ लोग selfish behave करेंगे and they will harm the society, create some kind of injustice, and we can say that disorder in the society. So first need is basically establish and maintain social order in the society. यही एक main, we can say, root हम cause या need बोलेंगे, significance बोलेंगे, it's of laws and rules. Now example we can say that criminal laws, right, to ensure social order, basic minimum standards of conduct, criminal laws are there and they will be punished if they, let's say, basic standards are violated, they will be punished, there will be punishment. Protect rights and freedoms of people. Yes, rights and freedoms, for example, right to privacy, data privacy. So personal data protection law that we have, ठीक है, 2023 personal data protection law. So we are protecting right to privacy, our data privacy is there. Freedom of people, so yes, freedoms are also protected through these different laws, right? So freedom of speech and expression is also protected. So it is protecting rights and freedoms of people. Laws and rules are important. Then create a deterrence effect is very important to, let's say, protect the people, their rights, as well as we can talk about is controlling the selfish behavior, harmful behavior of certain people. ठीक है, जो अनएथिकल बिहेवियर होता है उसको स्टॉप करना, ठीक है, प्रोहिबिट करना, ये भी जरूरी होता है. डिटरेंस, फॉर एग्जांपल, लेट्स से स्ट्रॉन्ग कैपिटल पनिशमेंट फॉर रेप, मर्डर. So it creates a deterrence that people will not do it, people not kill the other person. Capital punishment, that person can be hanged, that person can have life imprisonment. ये deterrence create करता है, डर होता है, ठीक है. Then promote public interest and welfare. So common good, we can say the public interest is like common good. So definition में हमने बोला it is basically to achieve common good or welfare. So such, for example, you can talk about is Environment Protection Act. So protecting environment is interest of all. It is in interest of all. That's why we are protecting environment, right? Similarly, we can give example of, we can talk about is biodiversity. It is in interest of all. Then peace and harmony. So for that purpose, what we are doing, we are having UPA Act, Unlawful Activities Prohibition Act. Public interest में है. We need order in society. So public interest. Then resolving disputes and conflicts. For that also we need laws and rules and regulations. Yes. So when the government is governing the people, there will be disputes. So we have federal structure. The states are fighting against each other. Their states are fighting with the center. So we have judiciary. We have, we can say, different laws also. For example, I will give example here for river water sharing. What we have? We have tribunals. We have river water boards, and they are established through law, right? Tribunals hai. So they are basically ensuring that there is no dispute and conflict is amicably resolved. Check against abuse of power, that is also important. The way we are ensuring rights and freedoms of people, at the same time the government is having power, authority, administration, so they should not misuse or abuse the power. Kaise check hoga? For example, we have we can say that Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. We have conduct rules for civil servants, public servants. So they are not misusing or abusing the power. Then finally, justice and protection to the vulnerable sections. It is mandate in the constitution, right? Social justice, economic justice. So how we are ensuring justice and protection to vulnerable sections? For example, SC/ST Protection Act 1989 is there. Then we have different, let's say, provisions like disability people protection act is there. For children we have POXO Act. For women we have Domestic Violence Act, POSH Act. सारा examples में लिखो यहाँ पे, ठीक है? You should be ready with one example each, and this is how you should mention significance and need of importance of law. Standard question बनता है आपके लिए, और ये 7 points are the most important points. With these examples also you can add. Okay, so this is now your answer directly. Now let's talk about next or next, let's say, topic, and that is, we can say that, yes, what it is saying, whether laws, rules are effective or reliable source of ethical guidance. Okay, so there can be comparison, laws, rules and regulations, and conscience. So whenever there are, let's say, limitations of laws and rules, regulations, conscience comes into the picture. Wherever there are limitations of conscience, laws and rules and regulations comes into the picture. So we'll compare them, because question itself is asked in this manner. So let's try to understand first of all arguments in favor. Yes, they are reliable. How? Legitimacy. Yes, legitimacy means they are enacted by the parliament, legislature. So it is will of the people. So ultimately we can say public interest is served. We can say reliable source of guidance. Okay, common good is achieved. Legitimate, we can say that objective is there under that law. Then other important aspect, uniformity. Yes, it is uniformly. So it will, we can say, across the, let's say, areas, or we can say that states. Now it will ensure uniform application of law. It will ensure fairness. Okay, Article 14, it will ensure Article 14 equality. We can say everyone is equal before the law. Equal before the law, uniform application or enforcement, we can say. Then authority. Yes, it has authority, and that's why we can say reliable. So it will remove subjectivity. Okay, people are supposed to follow these laws and regulations because there is authority to enforce it. So we can say that it is source of ethical guidance for people, that people have to follow certain traffic rules, follow tax rules. So it is a source of ethical guidance, that yes, authority is enforcing, and that authority is working for the people. They are not tyrants. So they are working for the people, and ultimately law has moral foundation, said by Thomas Hobbes. So why he is saying like this? Because in the definition itself, that it is enacted to achieve the common good. Every law, you can take any example. For weaker sections, POSH Act, women's sexual harassment of women at workplace, prohibition, prevention, and all these things. Domestic Violence Act, POXO Act for children protection, or let's say SC/ST Act to protect their dignity and remove untouchability practices and all. Fundamental right. So dignity, Article 21. So what are these? Basically, every law that is enacted has some kind of common good, public good, and that's why it has a moral foundation, especially in a democratic country, modern democracies we are talking, ठीक है, not in let's say authoritative dictatorship, ठीक है. So law has a moral foundation, Thomas Hobbes, so that's why it is a reliable source. Then argument against it, so why we are denying it, why it is not, let's say, reliable source? First of all, complex. So complexity, legal terms, common person, they do not understand it, so how it can be source of ethical guidance, right? Even for civil servant, complex laws and regulations will create a dilemma like situation, right? Old age laws are there, outdated, complex hai, outdated hai, it creates problem. Evolving situations, evolving issues are not being considered by these outdated laws. How we, let's say, it can be a source of ethical guidance, that's how it creates dilemma. Then weak enforcement and loopholes, so laws are not foolproof, right? And they are not enforced in spirit side, only in letter side, ठीक है. जो सिविल सर्वेंट्स होता है, अब वो लेटर साइड क्यों फॉलो करता है? टू इंश्योर फॉर्मल अकाउंटेबिलिटी, इसके बाद हम पढ़ेंगे आफ्टर दिस अकाउंटेबिलिटी. व्हाई? टू ensure that they are not being questioned by the anti corruption agencies, CBI, CVC, ठीक है. हमने जो काम था laws accordingly rules से किया हुआ है, but letter side, sorry, spirit side, they are not ensuring it. So weak enforcement हो रहा है, social justice welfare is not, we can say that, achieved. Then some laws are too harsh, ठीक है, too harsh, like for example love relationships, POCSO Act, 18 years of age, it's very extreme, too harsh for them, क्योंकि जो provisions है, love relationships are willingly, let's say, adolescents are involving in the love relationship, but they are criminalized under POCSO Act. ये क्या है? Too harsh हो गया, right? Sometimes certain situations, certain circumstances may result into certain violation of laws and rules. Circumstances also supposed to be considered. Socio-economic background, poor person, theft is there, ठीक है. अब थेफ्ट के लिए जो होगा वो क्या होगा? स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शंस हो गए, बट द सर्कमस्टेंसेस नॉट कंसिडर्ड. अनदर एग्जांपल you may have also faced, in self defense you are doing violence or harming the other person, but you are harming the other person, then laws will punish you, but where it was done in self defense, too harsh, ठीक है. तो हमें ये समझना है. Then biasness in enforcement, the people who are enforcing, the law enforcement agencies and the people who are, let's say, enforcing it, they are themselves having prejudices. Let's say there is a woman and she is going there in a police office for complaining that there is sexual harassment, ठीक है, sexual violence, abuse हुआ है उनके साथ, public place में हुआ है. Then the police officer themselves are, first thinking about, मैम कितने बजे हुआ है? अच्छा, रात को 12 बजे. तो they will like, what you are doing at night alone, where you are going, ठीक है. तो वो अगर कोई फ्रेंड के साथ होगी, समझो मेल फ्रेंड के साथ में, तो ये सही है कि आप मेल फ्रेंड, then you are like, you are doing the moral policing instead of looking at that person as a victim and enforcing these laws without any bias in letter and spirit. What you are doing? Biasness. ये जो है, it is not source of ethical guidance. Then laws are silent on evolving situations. Laws are silent on evolving situations, especially the way technology is evolving. Cyberspace, cyber crimes, every day you will come across new cyber crimes. Laws are basically lagging behind in dealing with these situations. Social media regulation और AI, उसका regulation तो अभी भी हम concern है कि कैसे करें, right? So evolving situation, law is not that much ethical, let's say, source of guidance. Ultimately, what we can say is ethics is the chief good, and laws basically process to achieve it. So it is a means to achieve end. End should be basically ethics. That is, we can say, ultimately welfare of people, public good, chief good. ये है ethics, ठीक है, chief good, and law is basically trying to achieve it. So it is a means. I hope that now you have understood this. Now let's talk about the next concept, that is, we can say that conscience. Okay, so conscience is very important. It's a concept, and many students have some misunderstanding about conscience. ठीक है, जब मैं students से बात करता हूँ तो some students even spell it like consciousness. See, conscience and कॉन्शियसनेस एंड कॉमन सेंस, तीनों अलग चीज है. ओके, आई विल टेल यू अंडरस्टैंड. फोर्थ वन इज इंट्यूशन. ठीक है, ये अलग अलग चीज है. हाउ, लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. कॉमन सेंस, it is based on the general understanding and knowledge that you have gathered with you. Okay, that you see that certain things are repeatedly observed like this, तो आप बोलते हो कि नहीं ऐसे ही तो होता है, that is a common sense. No, ठीक है, आपको, ठीक है, कि आप पब्लिक प्लेस पे हो, ठीक है, एंड व्हेन यू आर सिटिंग इन पब्लिक प्लेस एंड यू लेट्स से कम अक्रॉस अ पर्सन हु इज थ्रोइंग और लिटरिंग द प्लेस, so you would say that कॉमन सेंस नहीं है क्या? ठीक है, आपको डस्टबिन यूज करना चाहिए. इट इज कॉमन सेंस. ऑफ कोर्स एवरीवन शुड फॉलो दैट प्रिंसिपल टू कीप इट क्लीन. पब्लिक प्लेसेस, इट इज आवर ड्यूटी. ये हो गया कॉमन सेंस. मतलब जनरल अवेयरनेस होता है पीपल में, दैट सिविक सेंस इज दैट, उसको कॉमन सेंस बोलते हैं. ठीक है, कि क्या सही है और क्या गलत है बता. हियर वी आर नॉट इवैल्यूएटिंग दैट conduct or actions on the basis of ethical values standards. Now second one is intuition. इसको moral intuition भी कभी कभी बोलते हैं. एक क्वेश्चन आया था, what is moral intuition and moral reasoning, इसमें differentiate करो. This was the question, previous year question. Let's try to understand. Moral intuition is something that comes immediately in your mind. Something that comes immediately in your mind. Intuition बोलता है ना कि मेरा सिक्स सेंस बोल रहा है यार कि मैं पास हो जाऊंगा यूपीएससी. ठीक है, तो ये क्या होता है? ये इंट्यूशन होता है. दिस इज काइंड ऑफ इंट्यूशन. नाउ इंट्यूशन समटाइम्स is basically based on, we can say, our personal experiences, past experiences, our knowledge, and let's say we have been experiencing that situation repeatedly in our own life, in our own surrounding, and that gives intuition. ऐसे ही होगा प्रीलिम्स के एग्जाम में. ठीक है, आप कुछ क्वेश्चन ऐसे करते हैं ना कि गट फीलिंग आ रहा है यार अंदर से, पेट से, जब पूरा इंट्यूशन ये सही होगा. सिमिलरली in our day to day life, when we are dealing with the people and situations, you take decisions out of moral intuition. Okay, so you feel that at that moment that it might be right to do this thing, so aap kar dete hain. That is moral reasoning. It is based on, we can say, critical thinking, rational thinking, critical questioning, we can say that. So that is moral reasoning. So you are evaluating all the options well based on, we can say that, different ethical principles and standards, normative theories, deontology, and let's say utilitarian principles, everything, and then you are taking decisions. That is moral reasoning. Okay, then we are talking about is consciousness. Consciousness is about 5 senses that we are having. So when we are having all these 5 senses alert, and we are able to respond according to what these senses are sensing, what is happening around the surrounding, that is called as consciousness. So we are conscious, that means our senses are working. 5 senses, eyes, we can say, ears, our speech, tongue, everything, 5 senses, it is working. That is consciousness. So it is physical surrounding, and conscience is, we can say that, it is a moral compass. Definition: it is the inner moral compass, or we can say moral faculty inside us, that tells us that what is right and wrong, what is right and wrong in particular situation, what is right and wrong. So yes, even if we are not learning about ethics, still people know what is right and wrong. How? It is because of their moral development of conscience. And how it happens? It happens through socialization, developed through socialization process. In earlier session we talked about socialization. So the important personality or thinkers who talks about moral development of conscience theory, 6 stages given by Lawrence Kohlberg. Very interesting, pay attention here, right? So Lawrence Kohlberg, what he says that every human from childhood undergoes moral development of conscience through socialization process in 6 stages, and they are divided into 3, let's say, phases also. What are these? Pre-conventional stage, this is from 3 to 7 years. Okay, from 3 to 7 years. Now here the moral reasoning happens on the basis of self-interest, reward and punishment aspect. So look at the first stage. It says that obedience and punishment. So here the child is more concerned about obedience towards the parents, towards the teachers, what they are saying, because obedience will result into reward, and doing wrong thing or disobedience will result into punishment. This is how parents will do. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से हमें क्या होता है, मोरल रीजनिंग करता है हम इस स्टेज में. देन सेकंड स्टेज, individualism and self interest. Now here the concern is on self interest. So in your childhood also you may have, let's say, done good behavior to have some kind of, let's say, chocolates or sweets. When the parents, relatives अच्छे से behave करोगे तो chocolates मिलेंगे, कुछ मम्मी पापा हमें गिफ्ट्स देंगे. तो ये क्या है, सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट, इंडिविजुअलिज्म, more of selfish. And you may come across that selfish behavior affecting the moral development, and that's why parents will say that you need to share what you have with other students, other children, especially underprivileged. Sharing, caring, all these values are emphasized by the parents and teachers in this time period. You can come across this situation. कोई एक बच्चा होता है, उसके खिलौने वो शेयर ही नहीं करता है दूसरे के साथ. यही टाइम पीरियड में होता है, इसी स्टेजेस में होता है. And when these values of sharing and caring are basically given to child, moral development happens. Next stage is conventional stage, and here from 8 to 13 years of age. So what happens here? The moral reasoning happens through external factors. Okay, what are the external factors? Now see here. Stage 3, good boy, nice girl. So here the focus is on appreciation. So they want appreciation from their surrounding. So in this age we may have seen this behavior that we have also done. ये हमारे घर पे relatives आते हैं, then we will be very good to them. We will be very calm. Okay, we will stay silent. Will not talk too much. Will not do any masti at home with our siblings. ठीक है, मम्मी पापा को परेशान नहीं करेंगे. तो ये क्या है? Good boy, nice girl behavior. Appreciation from the relatives. Relatives will say that कितना अच्छा बच्चा है, कितने अच्छे संस्कार मिले हैं, ऐसा बोलेंगे कि नहीं? ठीक है, और वो हम खुशी मिलती है उससे. Same is at school, following the what teachers are saying. Again we can say that nice obedience towards the teachers, elders, ये सब होता है. Nice boy, nice girl, and we can say good boy. Then obedience to the law. So थोड़ा सा बढ़ जाता है, हम adolescent बन जाते हैं, तो obedience to the law. So follow लॉज एंड रूल्स. अचानक से हमें एकदम कंसर्न हो जाता है लॉ रूल्स से एक टाइम पीरियड में. ठीक है, तो वी आर मोर इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द रिवोल्यूशनरीज, वी आर मोर इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द फ्रीडम फाइटर्स इन दैट टाइम पीरियड, एंड वी आर मोर कंसर्न अबाउट पैट्रियोटिक फीलिंग, ओबीडियंस टू द लॉज एंड रूल्स. तो ये सब शुरू हो जाता है उस टाइम पीरियड में. देन देयर आफ्टर व्हाट इज दैट, पोस्ट कन्वेंशनल स्टेज. Okay, now here the moral reasoning is based on internal factors. Now here you are educated, you got more information, you have more now personal experience in terms of your surrounding interaction with different kinds of people, and that will lead to, we can say that next stage, social contract stage. So here you are concerned about your individual rights. ठीक है, सड्डा हक एथे रख, ये यंग यूथ जो होता है ये बोलना शुरू करता है. प्रेजेंटली आप देख सकते हैं नीट पेपर लीक में अब क्या है, आपने देखा होगा नीट पेपर लीक में इसी एज के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, अडल्ट हो गए अभी. अब यहाँ पे क्या है, उनके राइट्स वायलेट हो रहे हैं, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच वायलेट हो रहा है सोशल मीडिया पे. दे आर फाइटिंग फॉर देयर राइट्स. यू कैन कम अक्रॉस नाउ, लेट्स से प्रोटेस्ट कॉकरोच जनता पार्टी. ठीक है, एंड यू कैन सी दैट सोनम वांगचुक इज सपोर्टिंग. ठीक है, राइट्स आर वायलेटेड. देन द स्टूडेंट्स आर कमिंग आउट, पेपर लीक हो गया, हमारे राइट्स जो है, हमें इससे प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है. ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट शुड बी हेल्ड अकाउंटेबल. राइट्स, इंडिविजुअल राइट्स, वी आर कंसर्न अबाउट इट. स्पेस, घर पे भी देखिए आप, पर्सनल स्पेस, मम्मी पापा से हम बोलते हैं ये मेरा हक है. ठीक है, आप मेरे कमरे में बिना नॉक किया आइए मत. ठीक है, मुझे स्पेस चाहिए, मुझे फ्रीडम चाहिए. ठीक है, तो वहां पर आप आपके राइट्स पे फोकस करना शुरू करते हैं. यू आस्क फॉर योर राइट्स. Then lastly we can say that universal principles. Now this is also called as Kantian stage. It is also called as Kantian stage, and this Kantian stage is the last stage, we can say that. Now the people in 30s and 40s, they are more concerned about achieving wisdom, enlightenment, सेल्फ एक्चुअलाइजेशन, मास्लोज द फिफ्थ हायर नीड, ठीक है, वो स्टेजेस ऑफ नीड्स जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि हायर नीड में हाईएस्ट नीड क्या है, सेल्फ एक्चुअलाइजेशन. सो द पीपल आर नाउ मोर ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल लेट्स से अटेनमेंट उनको चाहिए, मटेरियलिस्टिक ये सब हो गया उनकी लाइफ में. नाउ दे आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स स्पिरिचुअल अचीवमेंट्स, ठीक है. द पीपल विल स्टार्ट डूइंग योगा, मेडिटेशन, the spiritual guru, they will start reading motivational books to achieve wisdom, and here they will focus on doing something good for the society, serving the people. This is what even civil servants are supposed to do, ठीक है. तो ये हो गया moral development of conscience. If the people, if every person is having that level of moral development of conscience, especially we can see that how society in Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and other European countries, they focus on moral development of conscience, so that when they have developed conscience, it acts as a source of ethical guidance. Then there is no need of laws and rules. ये बहुत जरूरी है. We'll see how it acts as a source of ethical guidance. I hope that it is very much understood now. ये direct आपके answers में लिखना है दोस्तों. Then we can see how it acts as a, we can say, source of ethical guidance. Look at this. Relevance to the administration. First of all, we'll try to understand why conscience is relevant here. Yes. First of all, we'll see who will guard the guardians. So who are the guardians here we are talking? Guardians are basically the state, or we can say government, or we can say that it is administration. So they are basically guarding whom? People, their rights, their life, their freedoms. Yes, weaker sections. They are the guardians. And for that purpose, they have been given power. They have been given power, authority, discretion. They have been given discretion. Now, when they are using this power, authority, discretion to guard us, they may misuse it. They may misuse it. They may abuse that power, and that will result into, we can say that, ये जो हमें गार्ड करने वाले हैं वो क्या करेंगे, मिसयूज करके हमें ही हार्म करेंगे. They will harm the people. They will not be enforcing the laws properly. There will be biasness in the enforcement. Ultimately, whatever the ideals, or we can say motive of that law is there, or the motive of, we can say that, the social contract, it is not achieved. Rule of law, social justice, and we can say welfare state, it is not achieved. And that's why, who will guard the guardians? That means who will guide them in ensuring or protecting our rights? It is basically conscience. Conscience, their inner check. ये क्या provide करेगा? Inner check. Look at this. Conscience as internal moral check. Yes. When the laws and rules, when the civil servants are facing the situation where the laws and rules are not speaking anything, then at that time the conscience will act as a guidance. Okay. When the laws and rules are silent, especially for example emergency situation, dilemma like situation is there, evolving situations where laws are silent, right? The new issues are evolving, like cyber crimes and all this, let's say new AI, and let's say new crimes are coming out, new dilemmas are there, new ethical concerns are there, where laws are yet to be enacted by the state. उस situation में conscience will ensure that the authority is, we can say, enforced, power is enforced in ethical manner. Right? But at the same time, we should also understand there are limitations. Limitations of what? Conscience. What are the limitations? Yes, conscience is subjective. That may differ from person to person. Why? Because the stages of development of that conscience are different for different people. कोई अभी 5th stage में होगा, 5th stage में जा ही नहीं पा रहा है, 4th stage में 5th तक पहुंच ही नहीं पा रहा है. That is problematic. No, it will create a subjective understanding of what is right and wrong. So one cannot depend on that as an ethical source of guidance. Difficult to observe also. It is an inner check inside us. How we can understand that the person is having well-developed conscience? It is very difficult to question the conscience, and we can say hold that person accountable externally. Not all can achieve higher stages of, we can say, moral development. especially fifth and sixth stage. Sixth stage, Kantian stage, is very difficult. Spiritual side, everyone is engrossed in own individual rights, materialism, consumerism. Nowadays you can see that most of the people are falling trapped to this particular, let's say, lifestyle, may lack consistency. The conscience of same person can lack consistency in a particular situation. The same dilemma, conscience may react in a different manner, and other situation may react in a different manner. So consistency in terms of application of conscience is also not observed, and difficult to distinguish between intuition, common sense, and conscience, especially for the people, even for the civil servants. And that's why it is not considered as, we can say, ethical source of guidance. But at the same time, you should understand in the end that which one is better. So when we say which one is better, so we should be understanding that whenever the laws and rules and regulations are silent or have limitations, conscience comes into the picture. But whenever laws and regulations are present, one should try to follow them, and not only in letter side but in spirit side. Ultimately, we can say that they are two sides of same coin. We can say that they complement each other rather than contradicting each other. This should be the conclusion. Now, you can give one famous quote by Mahatma Gandhi: "There is a higher court than the court of law or court of justice, that is court of conscience." Very famous. Do write in your answer. Now, there is one concept in conscience that is called as crisis of conscience. There was twice the question asked on crisis of conscience. Last session we have covered how emotional intelligence can overcome crisis of conscience. Okay, एक question is what is crisis of conscience, and give any one example from your personal life. Earlier 2013-14 में पूछा हुआ है, basic question. But yes, crisis of conscience is the phenomenon that is observed many times when the person faces a situation of indecision. The person is not able to take decision because of severe level of dilemma, highly challenging situation. उसको बोलते हैं हम crisis of conscience. Right, crisis of conscience. I will give example. So crisis of conscience, in the previous session also I have given similar example, that you are a driver of train. ठीक है, और ड्राइवर ऑफ ट्रेन है और सामने देख रहे हो आप 5 लोग हैं, उनको पता नहीं है ट्रेन आ रही है, and there is a diversion. But when you are going to divert, there is one person, that person is your own relative or own child. अब आप क्या करोगे? 5 पर्सन और खुद का बेटा, क्या करोगे आप? ट्रेन डाइवर्ट करोगे, सीधा ले जाओगे? So how you will react in that situation? Before taking decision, you will face this. क्या करूं? खुद ही मर जाऊं? खुद मर जाओगे तो क्या करोगे? बाकी इतने हजारों लोग बैठे हुए ट्रेन में, एक्सीडेंट हो जाएगा. That is not the solution. So basically, in crisis of conscience situation, first you come across that you recognize first. ठीक है, मैं यहाँ पे लिखता हूँ, यहाँ पर लिखने में आप भी लिख के रखिए. First, what happens is you recognize the situation. ठीक है, I will write here. First, you recognize that there is some problem. There is some problem. You recognize that, okay, doing this and doing that, I have to choose. There is problem, we can say that. Then second, we can talk about is detection. Recognize, then detection. Detection means which values are competing here. Okay, which are the alternatives available. Then we can say, okay, ये किया तो इसका outcome ये होगा. Outcome is problematic. If I take decision in this direction or opt for this option, then there will be, let's say, consequences. So we are able to detect it. And third is, we can say that major concern here happens, or let's say crisis happens when we are supposed to take decision. Crisis of conscience occurs this stage. At this stage, when we are supposed to take decision, we cannot avoid it. Crisis of conscience. So mostly it is, we can say that before the decision. And crisis of conscience is, we can say that something when we take the decision, if we are not able to live with the decision that we have taken, then there will be severe guilt. remorse, dissonance in our mind. People do suicide in these situations. That's why it is very important for civil servants especially, because they are continuously facing these challenging situations and dilemmas, and the phase of we can say or stages of indecision. क्या करें ऐसे सिचुएशन में? ऐसे सिचुएशन में आपको बहुत ज्यादा कुछ स्टैंडर्ड्स ऐसे चीजें फॉलो करनी है. व्हाट आर दीज? लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. ओके. Yes, crisis of situation, and there was one question asking about how it is manifested in public domain. This was the question in mains examination. So how does it manifest in the public domain? You have understood the meaning now, and how it, let's say, happens in the normal situation. Public domain, administrators, civil servants. Like for example, there is a political pressure. First, we can talk about this. There is a political pressure, and this political pressure is so common. Like I had given at the start of this session one example, that DM is there, politicians, minister is pressurizing you to award, give favor, political interest होता है rather than public welfare. So pressure to transfer honest officers, manipulate tender processes. I have given this example, right? Manipulation in tender process. Then corruption and bribery, right? So personal gain versus integrity. So again there is conflict. Whistleblowing dilemmas, loyalty to the colleagues, organization, and duty towards citizen. Sanjeev Chaturvedi, Satyendra Dubey, ये क्या है? Whistle blowing dilemmas. They must have faced severe dilemma, rather crisis of conscience while taking the decision of whistleblowing. Right. So you should understand their situation. Welfare versus strict rule enforcement. Demolition of informals in settlements without adequate rehabilitation. Again, we can say we may face crisis of conscience. सीनियर सीनियर ऑर्डर है, रिटर्न में भी ऑर्डर है, ऐसा नहीं कि रिटर्न में नहीं, रिटर्न में ऑर्डर है टू डिमोलिश द shanty settlement slums, and without giving them adequate time, without any proper rehabilitation, person may face crisis of conscience, state of indecision, dilemma, severe, it is challenging situation. Allocation of scarce resources, we can say equity versus efficiency, again severe dilemma. Balancing transparency and uh, confidentiality, you can see that most of the dilemmas, they result into severe indecision situation, that is resulting into crisis of conscience. Conflict of interest, the public interest versus private interest. Human rights, national security, internet shutdown during communal disturbance. Environmental protection versus development, again approving infrastructure projects affecting forest or tribal communities. Ethical leadership, career advancement versus moral courage. So this is how ethical leadership, ये सारा चीज आपको ध्यान रखना है. एंड इंडिकेटर्स ऑफ क्राइसिस ऑफ कॉन्शियंस, persistent moral discomfort, feeling of guilt or anxiety, difficulty in decision making, conflict between legal duty and ethical values, fear of consequences irrespective of decision taken. So that is, we can say, signs, characteristics of crisis of conscience. Okay, now ways to resolve crisis of conscience. First and foremost thing that you should have is high emotional intelligence. Yesterday only we talked about this. Emotional intelligence to ensure that how you are feeling, what are your emotions in that particular situation, whether we are able to manage them. Self awareness, self regulation, or self management. When we are able to manage them, automatically whatever the decision we will take, we will be able to implement it effectively. Courage of conviction, right? Let's say a civil servant, Kannan Gopinathan, IAS officer, so who was, let's say, recognized for anonymous efforts in Kerala floods 2018. He resigned in 2019 after the government decision of abolishing Article 370. He felt that the people or the civil servants who are basically responsible for protecting the freedom of speech of people end with their own voice curbed. They are not able to express freely, and that's why he resigned. Okay. Now those who are not able to resign and be in the civil services simply have that crisis and continue to live with it. If they do not have emotional intelligence, they will face lot of guilt, and we can say that anxiety, discomfort. They may face health problems also, and they may resort to suicides. ऐसे बहुत सारे cases हुए. They may lead to suicide also. So one should have high emotional intelligence. Fine. Now identify the ethical dilemma clearly, gather all facts. जैसे हमने रिजॉल्व किया था डायलेमा, वैसे ही हम क्राइसिस ऑफ कॉन्शियस को भी डील कर सकते हैं. Refer to constitutional values and service conduct rules, evaluate alternatives, seek guidance from the mentors and ethics committee, choose the opinion that is best upholding the constitutional morality, so that these things are eliminated. You are able to implement that decision and live with it with some kind of conviction. Okay, so ये guilt feeling remorse वो नहीं होगा या कम होगा if you are following this. Okay, so of course practice yoga, meditation, all these things you can write there, and reading motivational books, and we can say maintaining your emotional intelligence. So these are, we can say that, ways. This is how it manifests into, we can say that, public domain. Now next part, or next, let's say, aspect of syllabus, ये हमने cover कर लिया है, accountability. Now the next syllabus topic, we can say, now what is accountability? Let's try to understand this concept. Very, very important. Why we are saying very important? Because civil servants are basically component of government. They are the permanent employees of the government, and the government has power. Power is delegated to civil servants. Authority is given. At the same time, discretion is also given, and that's why whenever they are using that discretion and power for doing their duty, they may misuse or abuse it. It's human nature. Kautilya says that it is very difficult to put honey on the tongue and not taste it. This is what civil servants, they are basically having so much of power, honey, and not taste it. Test it for what? Self-interest, vested interest. So it is very difficult. That's why Kautilya will say that they should be held accountable. There should be checks on them. So basically, accountability is upholding and enforcing answerability. Upholding and enforcing, दोनों word important है. Enforcing answerability. Okay, answerability towards whom? Answerability towards seniors. Answerability towards, we can say that, judiciary. Answerability towards people and media. Right. So that is ultimately, in democracy, people are having real power. Government and civil servants are basically servants of the people. People are the masters. Rousseau will say like this: the evolving nature of social contract, from Thomas Hobbes to John Locke to Rousseau. And this is the way we are now focusing in the modern day democracy. People are having the power and the governments are servants. And that's why they should be held answerable. Whatever they are doing, their actions, their decisions, they must be open to questioning by the seniors, judiciary, people, and media. We can say that this is what concept of accountability is. Now, the accountability concept comes from the ideal bureaucracy given by Weber, Max Weber itself. But it has evolved over the period of time. We will try to understand that. But before that, quickly, need of accountability. I told you, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton. Very famous quote. One must use this whenever the question is about corruption, accountability, discretion, power. Right? The quote डालना ही हमें आंसर में. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Why it is said like this? Power is basically having authority to do something. When you have that power, the person may use it for welfare of other people or misuse it for own interest, vested interest. And that's why power corrupts. Okay? If the person is selfish, corrupt. And absolute power, that means if that person is not questioned at all for his actions and decisions, then again it will be reinforced and बड़ा क्राइम करेगा, वो बड़ा करप्शन करेगा और स्कैम्स करेगा. Corrupts absolutely. Okay. Then the measure of a man is what he does with the power. Plato. Measure of a man is basically talking about character. Because Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, they will focus on virtue ethics, character of the person. So character of the person is what he does with the power. Even Mahatma Gandhi says like this. Okay, so character of the person, when the person is treating the persons who are lower in stature than him. So आपको power है ना आपके पास. How you treat with the lower people. ठीक है, या जो सोसाइटी में वीकर सेक्शंस है या फिर उनके साथ कैसा आपका व्यवहार है, दैट शोज योर कैरेक्टर. सो संथनम कमिटी ऑन करप्शन has said that discretion is the main cause of corruption. Discretion is given to the people, civil servants, sorry, especially for dealing with the emergency situations or evolving situations, for we can say that implementing laws, rules and regulations, welfare schemes and programs at ground level where strict rules may not be good. थोड़ा सा flexibility की जरूरत है, discretion की जरूरत है, according to local customs and traditions. They may implement according to discretion. That discretion is given for civil servant, but that is misused for self-interest, and that's why it is said like this: power plus discretion minus accountability is equal to corruption. This is also highlighted by ARC second report, Ethics in Governance. Power plus discretion minus accountability, that means they are not questioned, they are not answerable, absolutely it will result into corruption. So ultimately we can say that it is about human character. When the person is having power and he is of good character, that person will use that power selflessly for welfare of other people to do public duty. But when the person is having weak character, that person will use that power, authority, discretion for self-interest, vested interest, and that's why it is problematic. Ultimately, accountability, we can say that traditional concept, it is evaluation of government, what are the positives and negatives of the government, and that is expressed through, if you talk about, let's say, the mythological aspect, or let's say Indian society, Raj Dharma. Raj Dharma will talk about, let's say, duty of the government, duty of the state, duty of the ruler, king, Raj Dharma. So, sorry, Kautilya will say in the Arthashastra, Raj Dharma. Then Ram Rajya, so Ramayana, Ram Rajya, it is basically the rule of law and justice, just rule, we can say that, just rule. And in the context of people and society, it is the rule of law. Okay, it is the rule of accountability. So try to relate with these terms also in your answer. Now, next we can talk about is accountability types. Before that, I will give you one simple example for understanding what is accountability types. Now, let's imagine that you are a district magistrate who implements welfare schemes and policies. Who implements welfare schemes and policies. Imagine, now, let's say you are implementing that scheme and policy. Now, for those decisions and actions that you are taking while implementing that policy, when you are answerable to the political executives, that is ministers, that is called as political accountability, because they are the decision makers, they are the part of government, they are the decision makers. So when you are accountable basically to the minister, immediate head, your head, we can say that it is political accountability. When you are, let's say, accountable to your seniors, you are accountable to senior officials, that is called as administrative accountability. That is called as administrative accountability. So here Max Weber will say that hierarchy, discipline. So one should listen to what senior official is ordering or saying. So ये क्या हो गया? Administrative accountability. You are accountable to the immediate senior, whatever you are doing and your actions. Then we can talk about is when the welfare schemes and programs are implemented, whether they are implemented in a fair manner, whether it is affecting the rights of, we can say that, any person, weaker section, they will go to judiciary. The court will ask you whether it was legal. So it is legal accountability. Judiciary, court, they will ensure that it is legal. Then we can talk about is whatever the public fund you are using for implementing that expenditure, whether it was done in a prudent manner. So your financial propriety or fiduciary responsibility will be checked by financial accountability, especially authorities like CAT. It will do audit, financial accountability it will check. Simple, when you are implementing those schemes and policies, who are the beneficiaries? Beneficiaries कौन है? Beneficiaries are people, no. So they must be able to ask questions to you. तो यहाँ पर क्या आ जाएगा? Social accountability. Social accountability, they will ask questions in social audit of that government scheme. MP Narega, all these schemes, social audit compulsory हो गए. People will ask question. आपने इतने लोगों को eligibility criteria दिया था, बताओ वो एलिजिबल कैसे है? हाउ यू दे वर एलिजिबल? हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू योरसेल्फ कैन आस्क दे आर नॉट एलिजिबल, ये फ्रॉड है, क्वेश्चन कर सकते हो. इट इज सोशल अकाउंटेबिलिटी. एंड फाइनली ये तो सब एक्सटर्नल था ना. Your inner conscience will say that while implementing that decision, let's say government scheme and program, whether you were following the laws and rules only in letter or in spirit, whether you are focusing on the final intention of implementing that particular scheme and program, that is social justice, suppose for example, whether justice is being ensured or simply you are following the rules and regulations, that inner conscience will tell you. And if you are facing any dilemma like situation, while using that discretion, you will ensure कि आपका conscience जो है उसको आप follow कर रहे हैं. That is called as moral accountability, inner check. अब देखिए कितने सिंपल टर्म्स मैंने आपको एक्सप्लेन कर दिया है. इट इज वेरी सिंपल टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट अकाउंटेबिलिटी इज देयर व्हेन यू आर बिकमिंग सिविल सर्वेंट. बट अब देखो थोड़ा सा स्टैंडर्ड टर्म्स में भी पढ़ना पड़ेगा ना. व्हाट एग्जाम विल आस्क दीस थिंग्स. ओके, so what is formal accountability? Let's try to understand professional accountability, moral accountability, social accountability. So traditionally, when the concept of accountability came into the picture, that yes, the government, the civil servants holds the power, then they must be held accountable, answerable, otherwise there will be abuse or misuse of power. There came the formal accountability concept. So formal accountability, for example, we can say that executive or government is held accountable by legislature. Legislature will ask question, or even judiciary. Then legislature is held accountable by judiciary if the laws are against basic structure of Indian Constitution. Then judiciary will be held accountable by executive in their appointment. So it is basically accountability, the different states. Then we can talk about is anti-corruption institutions. Anti-corruption institutions. So here we can write about, we can say that 5 C's. Okay, so CAC, CVC, CIC, and we can talk about is, let's say, courts. All these are what? And Lokayukta, Lokpal, anti-corruption institutions are there. They will ensure accountability of civil servants for their decisions and actions. Then we can talk about is internal mechanisms. So internal mechanisms are there. So the senior officials will be there. They will ask report, seniors reporting, internal inquiries. So this is, we can say that formal accountability will be there. Formal accountability. If you do something wrong, there will be internal inquiry against you. That is called as formal accountability. And the disciplinary action will be taken against you. In cases, severe cases, you will be suspended, you will be dismissed from your service also. Now, it has been found that these have limitations. Formal accountability has limitations because of, we can say that, outdated mechanism, loopholes, nexus, corruption, pressure. So ये जो है, these the organizations, anti-corruption organizations, these are manned by the people with weak integrity itself. They are themselves are corrupt. They are not able to cooperate with each other. So they are not having ethical leadership. CBI का हाल देख रहे हो आप, like it is called as caged parrot, ठीक है, by the Supreme Court. अब ये situations में formal accountability is not effective, and that's why thereafter the focus has been on professional integrity. Professional integrity focuses on outcome of actions by the civil servants. It focuses on quality of actions. It focuses on conduct rules, whether you are following conduct rules, code of ethics. So to ensure accountability, there are different mechanisms, like we can say that 360-degree review of civil servants, probity, sparrow. These portals are there which ensure that civil servants are acting in a transparent manner, or we can say that not doing any unethical actions. Right. Then we can talk about lateral entry. It is a kind of accountability, professional accountability on that. So professional accountability, but it is specific to that civil servant. It is not ensuring the larger accountability of administration. So it has its own limitations. And therefore, moral accountability is, now it is internal. Just now we talked about is inner check. It is more effective, we can say that. Inner check by conscience driven, character driven. So focus should be on character development. Focus should be on moral development of conscience. So there can be ethical training to the civil servants. And we can say that the moral aspect in terms of mentoring by the seniors, moral check is there. ये भी इतना strong नहीं है, but good governance era में we are focusing on social accountability. Social accountability is by people themselves, people, NGOs, civil society organizations, non-profit organizations. So they themselves are ensuring social accountability. What are the mechanisms? Excuse me, RTI, transparency, then citizen charter, then we can talk about is social audit. Okay, then we can talk about is e-governance. So all these are tools to ensure social accountability, and it is more effective nowadays because formal accountability is limited. They have limitations. To complement it, now social accountability is proving beneficial. Several, let's say, scams, corruption scams, like we can say 2G scam, आदर्श घोटाला, कॉमनवेल्थ, आरटीआई के थ्रू ही हम बोल सकते हैं बाहर आया है। रिसेंट वन आप देख सकते हो, मध्य प्रदेश में जो स्कैम था टीचर्स के रिक्रूटमेंट का, आरटीआई के थ्रू ही आया है। Now the media itself is involved in, we can say that through RTI it is exposing corruption, social accountability. ठीक है, MG नरेगा में कोई अगर गड़बड़ है, सोशल ऑडिट के थ्रू, right, ensuring responsiveness towards the people, their needs and grievance redressal, citizen charter. So basically it is said like this, RTI transparency, that sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption. ठीक है, तो और abuse of power, ये बहुत ही मतलब अच्छी चीज है social accountability. Now you have understood this thing also. So accountability, it is very clear to you now. ठीक है, तो types of accountability is clear. Now steps to improve accountability. This was a direct question in your mains examination. ठीक है, how we can improve the accountability? Promote ethical governance. What is ethical governance? Governance, good governance, ethical governance. I am going to explain it in detail, but quickly I will tell you. When the governance or the different components, organs of government, state, that is, we can say that politicians or political or executives, ministers, as well as judiciary and legislature, and the, let's say, administration or civil servants, judiciary, or let's say all follow, including private sector and civil service organizations, civil society organizations, all follow ethical means and values, principles that result into ethical governance. So promoting ethical governance in all aspects, because the government is not only the government, it is now having interaction with the private sector as well as civil society organizations, it is working with them. So there should be some kind of ethical framework in that interaction also. Strengthen anti-corruption institutions. Yes, it is important to ensure formal accountability. So whatever the recruitments are there, especially heads of these anti-corruption, so they need to be ethical. Ethical leadership is very important. They must be given some kind of flexibility, autonomy in their working. There should not be politicization of these institutions. These institutions should be effective in delivering what, let's say ED. अब ED जो है आप देखते हो उसका अरेस्ट रेट जो होता है एंड फाइनल कन्विक्शन रेट बहुत कम है, लोकपाल का तो बिल्कुल ही कम है। ठीक है, तो कैसे एक्चुअल में जो अगर एक्शंस नहीं होंगे करप्ट इंस्टीट्यूशन, करप्ट सिविल सर्वेंट्स पे, तो इन पे ट्रस्ट कैसे होगा? प्रमोट एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव ethics, especially by civil servants. So civil servants, there should be public service code implemented as suggested by ARC. As suggested by ARC. तो आप ये suggestion दीजिए ना, that is more effective. Strengthen tools of governance. So just now whatever the e-governance and social audit, RTI, they are tools of governance. Try to strengthen them so that more and more social accountability is ensured. That is more effective. Then trust building by the government. अब गवर्नमेंट बोलता है सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, trust building. That's why when there is a trust of people in the governance, the outcome of governance will be more effective. People, when they have trust in the government administration, the administration is able to deliver whatever its duties there, justice, welfare, in more effective manner, because people are cooperative. ठीक है, तो ये ट्रस्ट बहुत जरूरी होता है. थ्रू वेरियस एक्शंस, through transparency, through actions. Responsiveness is very important in terms of administration government towards the problems faced by people. Automatically trust builds that government is working for the people. ये हो गया trust building. And finally, although there is accountability, now we want actionable accountability. That means it is found that through social audit and let's say e-governance, RTI, these social accountability mechanisms, tools, we are able to expose the corrupt civil servants, corruption in the administration. But how much, let's say, that corruption aspect, or we can say civil servants are convicted and given punishment, that is called as actionable accountability. We want this now, right? तो हम, मैंने जैसे बोला ना कि ईडी अरेस्ट करता है, केसेस तो बहुत सारे हैं, बट फाइनल कन्विक्शन कितने लोगों का हो रहा है? लोकपाल कितने लोगों को कन्विक्ट कर रहा है? फाइनल कन्विक्शन, it is very less. We need actionable accountability so that it will set a, let's say, right precedence. It will create a deterrence against any kind of misuse of power, and this is how finally the accountability will be upheld. So I hope that now all concepts are clear. Finally, I will tell you the difference: governance, good governance, and ethical governance. There was one direct question on this topic: what do you mean by governance, good governance, and ethical governance? So again, we can expect questions like this. So simply, when we talk about, let's say, governance, governance is look at this. Governance refers to process by which authorities exercise to formulate and implement decisions, manage public resources, and deliver public services through interaction among government, private sector, and civil society. This is called as governance. Very basic thing. It was, let's say, given in 1990s by World Bank. Start में ये ऐसे हुआ. उसके बाद कॉन्सेप्ट आया गुड गवर्नेंस का. की फीचर्स ऑफ गवर्नेंस: रूल ऑफ लॉ, decision making and implementation, public administration, participation of stakeholders, accountability of institutions. Example: implementation of district level vaccination program with the help of various government department, NGOs, healthcare workers, local community. This is called as governance. Basic meaning. Now what is good governance is one step ahead. The good governance is efficient, transparent, accountable, participatory, responsive, equitable, based on rule of law, ensuring sustainable development and welfare. So good governance is, we can say, modern concept. It is focusing more on outcome, efficient होना चाहिए, transparent होना चाहिए, accountability, participatory होना चाहिए, responsive होना चाहिए, right? Principles: participation, rule of law, transparency, accountability, efficiency. It focuses on efficiency as well as equity. So concessions होना चाहिए stakeholders में. This is called as good governance. सबका साथ सबका विकास. It is good governance. It is also called as, we can say, Ram Rajya. We can say good governance. Now what is ethical governance? Ethical, as the name suggests, governance में ही ethical aspect आना, यानी कि ethical principles को follow होना, right? So ethical governance guided by ethical values: integrity, honesty, fairness, compassion, जो भी values है, public interest, ensure decisions are not only legal but also morally justified. It focuses on how power is exercised rather than what outcomes are achieved. This is outcome based. Here, how power is exercised. Integrity, honesty, objectivity, impartiality, जो भी civil service values है सारे लगा दो यहाँ. Okay, so this is very important aspect nowadays. Emphasis is on ethical governance. We have achieved good governance to some extent, right? DBT is there, direct benefit transfer, transparency is there, e-governance is there. So everything is online now, transparent. Mostly we are talking. But ethical governance, despite of that, there are loopholes. People are misusing. Even online contract होके भी अगर उसमें corruption हो रहा है, तो उसमें क्या है? Ethical governance नहीं है. That means private sector and when the government is working together, there is some kind of unholy nexus. ठीक है, तो यहाँ क्या है? Power is not exercised ethically. Lack of integrity. So there is need of integrity pact in PPP projects. ये example लिख दो, ठीक है? तो कोई भी misuse नहीं करेगा. Private sector will not be misusing. Government sector will not be misusing power. That this is how ethical governance, ultimately Ram Rajya, rule of law, and we can say that moral duty of the state is ensured. So now I hope that all this particular topic is clearly understood. हमने PYQs में maximum brainstorm किया है, मैं बार बार आपको बता रहा हूँ. Now you try to write answers to these PYQs and give these answers, submit to me, and I will give you feedback on those answers. Keep following these sessions. पहले के questions sessions नहीं देखे तो एक बार देख लो. You will have better idea about the future sessions. Next session में हम क्या cover करने वाले हैं? Corporate governance and ethics in international relations. Again, some part of this topic only, but every year 2 to 3 questions will be based on this topic. Even one case study will be based on this topic: corporate governance, ethics in international relations. And there are so many issues going on in international arena which are having ethical dimensions, which should be actually scrutinized from the ethical dimensions. तो इसलिए कल का जो नेक्स्ट टॉपिक जो सेशन होगा वो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट होगा. सो कीप फॉलोइंग दिस सेशंस. इफ यू हैवंट सब्सक्राइब, अगर अगले सेशन के लिए आपको नोटिफिकेशन चाहिए तो सब्सक्राइब करिए और आपके फ्रेंड्स के साथ ये जरूर शेयर करिएगा. वी आर शेयरिंग द नोट्स इन द कमेंट सेक्शन ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर सेक्शंस, तो आप बाद में उसको डाउनलोड करके रिवाइज भी करिएगा. Okay, so let us stop for this particular session. I will meet you in the next session. Okay, till then, keep studying.